Sorry, what went on there? Let me explain. Now we've had a look at types of passenger coaches, we've had a look at the different types of wagons, we've looked at how freight trains and passenger trains are put together and some of the rules surrounding those, and as a result of that we've looked at train head codes as to how those trains are described. Now what I'm not going to do is to talk about the block system of how trains were moved around the railway system, because there are plenty of videos on YouTube explaining that much better than I can. Essentially, each signalman controls a section of line, and only one train is allowed in that section at any one time. Thereby, the safety of the train is preserved. Well, that's fine. But how do the signalmen talk to each other? Well, in the days before telecommunications and electronics, they needed a simple, quick and effective method of referring trains up and down the line. Now, although there were telephones between the signal boxes, the communication between them tended to be done with bell codes, with bells that sounded like this. Now that's a bicycle bell, but that's the sort of thing that is ideally used by us, and I'll come on to how we turn this bell code system into something we can use on our model railways later. Now here comes the usual caveat. What I'm going to talk about relates to my area and my era. So I'm talking about North East England, late 50s, early 60s, and the bell codes that were active at that time with British Railways. Please make sure that you research your own area and your own era. What I'm going to give you here are general principles. So there are two different types of bell codes. The first set, as you can see at the top of this list, is calling attention. In other words, I've got something I want to say to you, and just information about the trains and moving around from one section to another. The second list is a series of questions, although that's not how they appear here, but they are a list of questions, and all these questions are in the form of, is the line clear for whatever type of train it is? So to take the first one, 4 bells would mean, is the line clear for an express passenger train? And that would be given like this. Now the next signalman along the line would refer to his instruments, and he would either give a reply in the form of 4 bells, in other words the same signal back, or he wouldn't give any reply at all if the line wasn't clear. So there isn't a signal that means the line is not clear. He just doesn't give that signal back. But if the express passenger train was able to enter his section because his line was clear, he would simply reply with the same 4 bells. Now, rather than the bells just start ringing and the signalman not really understand where it's coming from or what's going on, the communication between the signal boxes always began with call attention. So we would call the signal box down the line with call attention. And the guy at the other signal box, if he was listening, would reply. And then we knew we were in conversation, and I could ask him the questions. So now we're in a situation where I've called the attention of the guy down the line. I've asked him if his line is clear for an express passenger train, and he's come back to me to say, yes, the line is clear. So I pull off my signals, and the train disappears off into the section, and I send him the signal which says, train entering section. 2 bells. And he responds to acknowledge that. And then I know and he knows that there's a train entering the section on its way between me and him. Now when it arrives at his signal box, or he arrives in his section, he can tell me that the train has left my section. So he sends me train out of section. I say, that train is now out of my section, I can clear my signals and do everything else, and I'll acknowledge that with him by sending him that same signal back. And there we've now dealt with the passage of that train from my section to his. Now looking down this list, you can see that I've got here on this particular sheet all of the trains that relate to Yarslow, and I would suggest probably the vast majority of trains that we're going to use on our general layout. So we have express passenger trains, breakdown trains or inspection saloons, they all run under head code A. Ordinary passenger trains run under B. C-class freights and empty stock runs under C. Then we've got D, E and F. Light engines, of course, are class G. H-class freights, J-class minerals and K-class stopping freights. Now, if you do a bit of research, you'll realise that there are probably another 20 or 30 different codes for sending messages up and down the line with regard to out of gauge trains, my signal's not working, opening my signal box or closing my signal box. There's loads of those, but you don't really need those on a model railway. The one you probably do need is the one that's at the top there, 4-5, tail lamp missing. It was important when the train arrived in the section that the signalman looked at the back of the train and saw that it had a tail lamp. That told him that the train was complete. Now, if that train didn't have or wasn't showing a tail lamp, there was a chance that some of it was still lost in a section somewhere. So he would send back that 4-5 signal to the previous signal box saying the tail lamp is missing, there is something wrong. And that's something which perhaps might come in handy for us on our model railway. So what's the use of these bell codes in a model scenario? Well, I would argue that any layout where you've got more than one operator, you need a system of communicating between those operators. I would suggest that bell codes is one way of doing it. It may not be the only way of doing it, but they do add to the ambience of the thing. I'm going to install a system of bicycle bells at Yarslow so that if there's more than one operator, we have a communication system between us. And this list of bell codes, I think, is all we're going to need. Very simple to do. So I'm going to finish with this. "755, closing signal box." I hope all that makes sense. I'll see you soon.